Hello and welcome to the New World Review, your source for everything anime and manga, and we are back to talk about what this anti-magic child does before, during, and indeed after spats of yelling. Seriously, I'm only reading the manga and I am getting hit with the full force of Asta's vocal range. But more specifically, we are here to talk about arc number 3 of Black Clover, which I believe is named the Royal Capital arc. Another very fun and surprising set of chapters that give me that very familiar feeling of starting off in quite a generic place before taking those concepts one step further than your average shonen series. And I really enjoyed this arc actually. Honestly, probably not quite as much as the dungeon exploration, but there is a ton to digest here regardless. And before I engage in digestion, please do take a moment to digest this request to subscribe to the New World Review. As per usual, I probably won't be reading these comments due to fear of spoilers, so subscribing through this video and liking this video are the only ways I can really tell if you want more of Black Clover. But the premise of our third arc goes as follows. After doing some seriously cool stuff in the dungeon, Asta, Yuno, and friends of Asta and Yuno are invited to the Royal Capital in order to file a report with Mr. Wizard King himself. And while they're here, they meet all sorts of nobility and general high-ranking mages, some of which are pricks, some of which are amazing, and others are just meh. So meh that they may as well not even be there. However, everyone must then work together when the capital is attacked by dark, magical cultists led by crazy people. It's a fine premise, the stating of which does the arc no justice whatsoever, because just as with the previous arc, most of the substance here lies with internal character evolution, intriguing interactions, and the overall theme of the arc, which is benchmarking. And we're going to start this discussion with the latter because in practically every shonen series, the plucky young protagonist will eventually hit a wall. Something that their unique power and relentless determination is simply unable to overcome in any circumstances, thus giving them a benchmark to surpass in the future. Now, Black Clover takes that concept a step further with the Royal Capital arc, and while subtle, it gives us a roadmap for going forward with an almost step-by-step guide as to how either Asta or Yuno is going to become the Wizard King. And it begins pretty damn immediately by showcasing the Magic Knight ranking system, which is very simple but very effective. There are 5 grand ranks, and within each of those 5, they are divided into a further 5 subclasses. It's a lot of 5s there. But assuming that the Wizard King does not have that subclass system, this would give us 20 levels of Magic Knight progress that we will need to travel through before the idea of Wizard King becomes anywhere near tangible. And I love this, by the way, because I said this in the last video, but I crave rules and structure. The last arc provided that for magic, and this arc provides that for organizational structure. Now with that said, how does this help us in regards to Asta? Well, it's tricky because he doesn't seem to initially fit anywhere here, given that his current rank isn't mentioned to the best of my knowledge. Maybe it did and I missed it. But I would have to assume that he is a junior Magic Knight 5th class, aka the lowest of the ranks. But technical definitions are only half of the truth here. In reality, Tabata does something very interesting to kind of let us know where Asta is power-wise, and that comes in the character of Leopold. It might be quite a comical aspect of the arc, but Leopold declares Asta his rival, and throughout the ensuing events, these two are often depicted as equals, especially at the end where they're both fighting like rabid animals. And Leopold just so happens to be an intermediate Magic Knight, 2nd class, so regardless of any official ranking, this seems to me about where Asta sits, which is a step or two above entry level, but he still has a long way to go. And from there, our next benchmark is seen in the squad captains. Asta is thoroughly outclassed by both Fuego Leon and Nozel. Meanwhile, these two are shown to be thoroughly outclassed by the power of the Wizard King, who is himself also potentially outclassed by the mystery villain at the end of the arc, thus giving us these really tangible steps to be taken by Asta and Yuno. We now have something to benchmark them against going forward, and this arc essentially allows us to track their progress on a chart if we so saw fit. It's not just Asta and Yuno either. Most of the key characters in this arc have some sort of benchmark set for them. Leopold, for example, is now very directly on a quest to surpass Fuego Leon and even become the Wizard King himself. And you know what? Even Noelle has a new benchmark, which is admittedly minor, but it is present and it is simply not to remain weak, which is one of the best lines in the arc actually, when Fuego Leon tells her that being weak is nothing to be ashamed of, but staying weak is. I really love that. What I did not love, however, is both Noelle and Mimosa all of a sudden being all smitten with Asta, because I hate this trope so much. I mean, yeah, I enjoyed it as a teenager. I don't know though, as a man in his early 30s, there is a limit to how much I can tolerate awkwardly written love-struck 15-year-old girls, and I really hope this isn't how they're both going to be going forward for the next, I don't know, however long this series is. But now we're introduced to a whole ton of new characters in this arc, which I think is both a good and a bad thing. On the one hand, I really love that Tabata is consistently filling this world with as much content content as he can muster, which in this case comes in the form of an arse ton of characters. I like it because it widens our focus beyond the Asta-centric groups, but at times that focus can get a bit too wide even for me. One example would be early on when we see all of the Magic Knights receiving their promotions. We see Leopold get his, and that's nice. Then we see Sol get hers, and that's also nice. But then you turn the page and it's just this 2-page spread of like 5 other people being promoted one by one, and I just stopped caring immediately. For the most part, it was fine though. I don't mind these unique faces popping up and not being explored too deeply because that just effectively fills the world. Just please no more 2-page spreads of people I don't care about being promoted. And I will say this feeling also extends into some of the action of the arc. There's a part near the beginning of all of the fighting where we have like 6 pages in a row of prominent Magic Knights just firing off their mage juices, and if I stop and look at all of the panels, they're all cool in their own way, but after like the 3rd page of watching a random Magic Knight unload a spell, I was kind of over it. Because to me, that really killed the pacing of the chapter. Action is supposed to be fast and exciting. You know, 1 or 2 bursts would have been great, however, when we linger and go through every single mage's opening attack one by one over the course of 6 pages, then it makes me feel like I'm stuck in the Wizard King's chronostasis spell, like I'm living in this one unending moment. And given that most of these spells are shown later on in the arc anyway, you really didn't need to cram them all in here, because not only did it slow everything down, but Tabata also blew his load for revealing them in a more exciting way later on. Anyway, that's enough negativity. Let's move on and talk about some negativity. So some of these new characters just so happen to be Noelle's relatives, and they're quite essential here. 2 older brothers and 1 older sister of House Silver, and I hate these people. Each and every single one of them can go screw themselves in the most uncomfortable way possible. However, I love this dynamic. I hate them because they're designed to be hated, and it leads to a great moment with Asta telling them all to F off early on. And you know, not in those words, but it is nice to see the underdog put these pricks in their place. With that said, Noelle's relatives do have one redeeming feature so far in Nozzle. He has a brief flashback at the end of the arc to highlight his camaraderie and or rivalry with Fuego Leon, and that was really nice. In many ways, yes, he is still a complete and utter asshole, but at least he has a lot more depth than the other of the assholes. And speaking of Fuego Leon, I've brought him up a lot already, but I love him. The moment where he told Asta that you and I are rivals as well is all I needed to sell me on him. He is absolutely fantastic in every way, which is of course why he had to be hurt quite badly even, because we care about him and that makes him a very effective target for drama. And as for those who were doing the hurting, the main villains of this arc aren't quite as interesting to me as Lotus and Mars. I think those 2 really were something special, but I suppose these guys will do. I mean, Rades had an intriguing inferiority complex going on, trying to prove himself to be betterer than all of the nobles who would look down upon him, and on top of that, the dude only had 1 spell. I mean, what a loser. But also not really, because he does of course remind me a lot of Asta. Looked down upon, cast aside, and really only has this one narrow yet incredibly effective talent. Rades is Asta if he went down a darker road, which I guess he is, pursuing the power of what may be a literal devil, so we'll see about that. But in regards to Rades, his magic was also quite interesting. I do like how he managed to use his 1 spell to provide this amazing level of versatility, and I did also quite like his design. I just wasn't 100% sold on him though. I understand his motivation to a degree, you know, getting revenge on the pompous people, it's always a good one, but there is a massive gap between that and, you know, trying to murder children for fun. All in all, he was just a bit more generically evil than I would have liked and a bit less interesting as a result. And I'd say the same for Old Lady, who I think is named Catherine. I prefer what Yuno called her though, and I actually don't really know what to say about her. I mean, she was there, she was certainly there. And there was even a 3rd one as well. It doesn't matter. Something that is important is that they all seem to know about Asta's anti-magic, and I want to know how. To my knowledge, that's not something that's been widely publicized, and really the only people who should know are those within the Magic Knights or those who took and failed the exam, which I suppose may mean we have a traitor in our midst, which is always fun if so. And in regards to other things, Yuno was understated but fantastic during this arc. He got deprived of his 5 senses and learned to connect with his new fairy friend, who was apparently Sylph, a mightily OP wind spirit and one of the 4 great attributes, which does excite me because I now eagerly await the discovery of the other 3. And as for the Wizard King himself, I still don't really know how to feel about him. He's quite charming and eccentric, whilst also harboring this fairly terrifying potential. Not just in terms of raw power, but his beliefs can be fairly harsh as well. Like when he just up and murdered some fools stating that, well, they were prepared to die, right? As well as almost appearing to take pleasure in the idea of torturing them through the chronostasis spell. So at the moment, I really don't quite see him as the role model Asta does, because this dude has some pretty damn dark features. features. In addition to that, apparently there is a non-wizard king in this world as well, someone who prefers to be adorned by mysterious shrouds and many assumedly beautiful human females. And he seems to be set up to be a pretty obvious bad dude dick right now, but I suppose it's nice to know that magic isn't everything in this world. Like, it's not as if the wizard king just rules the entire nation like I initially thought he might. Oh, and also Charmy was here. I like her, she's cute and furiously powerful. She had nothing to do with anything, but she was admittedly a nice break from all of the serious business happening elsewhere. But yeah, the Royal Capital arc was quite good overall. It was much more of a mixed bag than the dungeon exploration one, but I'm quite glad that Aster has hit his wall now, because we can begin working on getting beyond that and slowly working our way up the tier system that has been set up for us. But that pretty much does it for this blind review of the Royal Capital arc, and what do you guys think? Please do leave your thoughts in the comments below, or even join my Discord server. And if you're keen for some more Black Clover content, then please do go and check out some of my other videos, or even subscribe to the channel for very maybe Black Clover goodness delivered straight into your YouTube feed. But for now, this has been the New World Review, and I'll see you next time.